He's a tough street-fighting lawyer with the highest ratings for honesty and integrity. He's here to answer your legal questions and get you the help you need. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Joe Ingram has more than 20 years' experience fighting for his clients here in the state of Alabama. Joe's focus is criminal defense and family law. You don't have to face your legal issue alone. You've got Joe Ingram on your side. In case of sensitive legal matters, you can always reach out directly to Joe at joeingramlaw.com and arrange for a private consultation. And now, Alabama's defender of the defenseless, protector of the people, and all-around good guy, Joe Ingram.
All right. Today is February 21st, 2026. You are listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram, your Alabama lawyer, on WERC 105.5 FM in Birmingham, 102.5 WBHP in Huntsville, and 105.9 in Tuscaloosa. We have a great guest in the studio today, Miss Katherine Robertson. She is the chief counsel to Steve Marshall for the AG's office, has been for over a decade. She is going to join us in just a few minutes. We are extremely grateful to have her today before the primary. Next week, we have Jared Wellborn. He's running for a judgeship in Shelby County. You don't want to miss that interview next week, folks. If you're listening to the show, we always ask you to listen, download the podcast, share with your friends, share with your neighbors, share with your enemies, share with everybody. As we always ask, the little red app on your phone, the little iHeartRadio app, that's the Spy for Rent hotline. That is my exclusive investigators in the state of Alabama. Jeff Hammock, Corey Fuller are the names to know, whether it's for serving papers. Is it for investigating your spouse in a divorce case? Is it for doing a forensic cell phone search for me of your wife's cell phone? Is it for doing a bug sweep of your house? And yes, they do a lot of bug sweeps. Believe it or not, folks, we do those all the time. So anyway, enough about me. I want to spend as much time as I can with Miss Katherine because she made time for us today. Miss Katherine Robertson, introduce yourself to talk radio in Alabama.
Yeah, I'm Katherine Robertson, Service Chief Counsel to the current Attorney General. As you mentioned, I've held that position for quite some time, and since the current AG, Steve Marshall, cannot run again, I decided I would give it a shot. Kicked off my campaign last June, and it's going real well, and we're on the fast track to May 19th, the Republican primary.
May 19th. Do you have a little tick mark on your calendars marking off the day?
Absolutely. Count down the hours.
Do you? We were talking before the show, talking about travel schedules for a statewide office. Okay, Katherine, we're going to mix it up. You've done lots of interviews, lots of speaking. Don't want to rehash things that you've been asked before, other than the fact that you have a longer format here for people to hear some answers, okay? So first of all, let me ask you this. And the only reason to ask this, you and I both know because we have a legal background. Average person on the street, what is the AG's office and why does it matter to me?
Yeah.
Give us the high-level definition.
Yeah, one of the things I've really set out to accomplish on the campaign trail is just making sure people do know what the AG's office is, that they know what the job is, because really when you go to vote, I would argue is maybe the most important thing you're going to vote for, and I'll tell you why. So the Attorney General is generally known as two things: the state's chief law enforcement officer and the head of the state's law firm. That means about 1 million different things. We have about 17 different divisions. We've got lawyers running in all kinds of different directions. It would take me a long time to name all of those, but we have a public safety role inside the state of Alabama. Obviously, we have trial attorneys dedicated to criminal prosecutions, criminal appeals, and the like. We have a consumer protection division that's one of our broadest areas of authority, where we look out for Alabama consumers on either an individual scale or a large scale. We do Medicaid fraud. We issue AG's opinions. We are the civil defense firm for the state. We are the state's plaintiff's firm in some ways. And then kind of the new role of the modern attorney general is to defend Alabama's interest beyond the four corners of Alabama. And so we spend a lot of time litigating on the federal level, either working with or against the administration in Washington. And then sometimes we even have, conflicting interests with other states where we have to litigate against other states to look out for Alabama's industries, our economy, and ultimately our sovereignty. And so the AG's office is really the epicenter of state government. We represent every other constitutional officer. We give them legal advice. We help them formulate their legal positions through opinions and litigation. And so it is a very complex office. It is obviously a politically elected office that you run for, but it is, I think, a lot more substantive than most of the other things that you go to vote for. And so having been there for 10 years, it's like I actually have my arms wrapped around not only what the job is, but I think how to do the job well. And so I think my pitch is vote for me because I'm the most qualified, but also let me tell you what it is that we do all day, because I think a lot of people don't know.
You said something. I'm going to stop my questions because I want to bring this up. I think this is really important. You said sometimes we are the plaintiff lawyer for the state.
Yeah.
Are you familiar or are you following the lawsuit out in New Mexico where the AG's office is suing Meta?
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to talk about that in the second hour, but I just want you to briefly talk about this for a second because it's really important. Explain the role as the chief prosecutor in the state if you feel the need to protect the children of the state, but the porn websites that they've put the block on. Talk about that just for a second.
Yeah, so our Consumer Protection Division operates under a statute called the Deceptive Trade Practices Act. Every state has one. It's either known as the Uniform Deceptive Trade Practices Act. Ours is the DTPA. But that is a very, very broad tool to basically right wrongs against consumers. If they are deceived, if they are victims of fraud, if something is labeled as safe when it's not, if something says that there are safety restrictions and they're really not, that is a massive amount of power. And it can be used to go after businesses just to shake them down, or it can be used to get injunctive relief that really will change things in an industry. And so what you see is all 50 states have that power, and they all use it differently. We obviously caucus with the Republican attorneys general, and so there are times where we go it alone and we file suit against a company and we, just as Alabama, and we run it down and get the relief that we're seeking. But there are times where you're working with either, 20 Republican states or maybe 40 red and blue states to accomplish a goal. When we litigate against big tech, you can imagine that is extremely burdensome for a small office like ours. I mean, you're talking millions of pages of discovery, David versus Goliath. But when we join up with other states, the table is a little more evenly set. And so there have been lots of different coalitions going after various big tech companies. Some of those we participated in, some of those we haven't, because the truth is Alabama normally enjoys the relief that other states are able to get. And so we don't have to be frontline, center stage on every one of those cases. Right now, we're taking the lead against TikTok for the things that they have been feeding children. The fact that they are labeling their product as safe for parents, that they say they have these age restrictions that may not always be into play, and that there is an addictive nature to the kind of content they're feeding minors. That's the one that we're leading right now, and you see different AGs kind of going after different angles in protection of children. Internet, online safety, and now the evolution of AI is just going to continue to be top of mind in the consumer protection world.
Yeah. I'm going to circle back to, I hate that term, circle back Psaki.
Jen
John,
Psaki.
never let me say that again.
That's right.
But I want to come back to about the AI thing in a minute. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so next question I want to hit you on really fast.
Sure.
Your stance as AG regarding immigration policy of the state. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm going to support the president on this. I think the people elected him to not only close our border, which he has done, but also to make sure that there are not dangerous people living here, that just walked across the border under Joe Biden. And I have always felt strongly about, enforcement of illegal immigration. I worked for Jeff Sessions, one of my first jobs, so he trained me well on that issue. But I went to Yuma, Arizona last year, got to visit the border and spend some time with the Border Patrol. And the thing that scared me the most is that I think a lot of people believe that everybody who came across the border is from Central America. But what they were talking about was, people from China, people from enemy nations in the Middle East. And so I applaud what the president's doing. It has not been easy. Obviously, he's hit some bumps in the road in places like Minnesota. But in Alabama, I think our law enforcement is cooperating very well as far as we can tell with federal law enforcement. We've tried to be a hub for that and keep in touch closely with them. But I just think America has enough problems and enough criminals to deal with to not have to be dealing with the bad apples of other countries. And so I really think you're going to see public safety improve across the board because of these efforts.
As far as election laws and fraud, I want you to talk about your stance on that. I've seen some interviews where you have said that Alabama has done a really good job as far as we're doing a good job as far as cleaning up our backlogs and our rolls. Mm-hmm. All right. Me, as the average citizen, not as a lawyer, how we still vote in the state, do you think it's time that we can do a better job in how we vote? We still go in there and we're doing like the little circles with a pen or a pencil and running them through a scanning machine. Aren't we just a little bit outdated now in 2026? What do you think?
Well, I can tell you there's a lot of schools of thought on that. There are groups in Alabama that are pushing hard for paper ballots. There are groups that still don't support, the electronic voting machines, that they're, got some, I think, paranoia about that after the 2020 election. I, in my role, haven't played any kind of a frontline role in the actual election day voting and all that. I think the biggest problem we see is that there are counties that are notorious for having numbers that just don't seem to add up, whether it's absentee ballots or, voter rolls that don't seem to reflect the number of people that live there at the time. You
vote just, early, vote often.
Yeah, you see some funny business actually in the part of the state that I'm from, which is the Black Belt. But I was actually having this conversation recently with Secretary Allen. We can't make cases if people aren't willing to, come and sit down with an investigator and tell them what they've seen. And so there's a lot of protectionist mentality in those areas. But I think by and large, our elections are safe and secure. We should always be looking for ways to improve. I know that the legislature has been debating a bill about post-election audits and that kind of thing. I think we should always be looking for ways to tighten them up. But I do feel like compared to what we've seen from a lot of other states, I feel pretty good about what we're doing.
Okay, good. All right, you're familiar with the cannabis legislation that Kay Ivey signed into law last May?
Yep.
You familiar with that?
I'm very familiar with that.
Okay, I would think so in the AG's office.
Yep.
All right, so a number of my clients are hemp businesses. Mm-hmm. I kind of get it, kind of don't. I think, sometimes they make the sausage and they don't look at everything going into it. What are your thoughts on a lot of this product, from my experience, falls under the 2018 Federal Farm Bill.
That's right.
Hemp legislation. Mm-hmm. I personally think that this law should be challenged in federal court. They've already tried to challenge it last summer down in Montgomery. I believe it's Judge Evans. Maybe it wasn't Judge Evans. May have that name wrong. He kicked it down. Anyway, what's your thoughts on the cannabis new legislation?
You talking about the product, like the hemp?
Right.
THC.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm real careful to talk about this because sometimes you can mix the language on this. Yeah. So there's hemp,
right,
which is hemp, right? You don't smoke it, you don't eat it. It's hemp,
right?
And that Congress dealt with that in the Farm Bill. It permitted for it to be grown. It has a very low concentration of THC for it to be legal, and so there's that area of the law. And then way over here, you have marijuana, which is either the recreational kind or the medical kind. There's obviously been a debate in Alabama on medical. We've legalized that. It's not up and running yet, but there's that. The middle column is these THC products. And
the jellies,
yes,
all that stuff. Go ahead.
Well, no. So there's CBD products, which are legal up to a certain percentage of THC, and then there's this kind of new lane of products of Delta 8 and that kind of thing. And so it's sort of difficult to distinguish between all those. I would need a whiteboard and a marker. But the most recent action on that is kind of like, how is the state regulating those products? And so the legislature this past session did a pretty significant ban on some of those products, the ingestible kind that have either Delta 8 or a certain amount of THC. So you've got a CBD market, you've got a hemp market, you've got true marijuana way over here, and then you've got this middle lane. The case you're talking about was the Department of Ag and the Department of Public Health's ability to regulate those kind of products, to shut down stores that might be selling them and that kind of thing. And then the legislature came back and did a more sweeping prohibition on those. So I would just say that all of that has left law enforcement in a little bit of a gray area, because sometimes it can be difficult to tell which bucket these products fall into. And they can be advertised as something that they're not. They can be advertised as something better than what they are or worse than what they are. And I think the biggest fear is that young people will go into gas stations and buy something and ingest it. And, they're not FDA-approved products, and they can cause, have adverse health impacts. And so we're sort of in the middle of all that. Our role is to try to give guidance to law enforcement when the legislature does make changes. But yeah, it's a little bit of a wild, wild west out there, because what we've seen is that when you make any type of drug illegal, these people go into a lab and change it by one molecule so that it no longer fits the exact chemical that you banned or the exact chemistry that you banned. And so they come back and make what I call a gas station drug that's just a little bit off so that it's not illegal. And then you have to wait for either Department of Public Health to do an emergency ban on it, or you have to wait for the legislature to come in and legislate that way. And so these folks that produce this stuff are pretty smart. They're always one step ahead of the law. And so, again, law enforcement likes black and white. They like to know what they can go after and what they can't. And so we're constantly trying to give them guidance and training on how to enforce these laws.
Talking with Katherine Robertson, running for the Attorney General's office. Katherine, you mentioned that you worked with Jeff Sessions when he was a senator.
Yes.
You worked with the Judiciary Committee?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
He was the ranking member of the judiciary at the time. It was
right
when the Republicans did not hold the Senate or the White House, so it was a very interesting time.
Yeah. So this is something that's really dear to me based on my background. When you were in that role, you got to see senators like Lindsey Graham, probably Senator Mike Lee of Utah, Ted Cruz, phenomenal lawyers all over the state, brilliant legal minds. Did you ever take a step back and go home and think, was there any one person other than the man you worked for when you left the job that you thought, wow, this person really blows me away in their legal scholarly thinking on that committee?
I loved John Kyle. He was just such a gentleman, really smart, had a great staff.
Of Texas?
John Kyle was from Arizona.
Arizona.
Ted Cruz is a really smart guy. I mean, he can be polarizing, but I really respect him, and I think he's super smart. But I think when I look back, that was 2011, to 2013-ish that I was on that committee. What I look back now and think is that collegiality that existed back then, even with the Democrats, does not exist anymore. I mean, it was such a different time, even though it wasn't that long ago. You had kind of the old school Republicans that had been there, and then you had, some fresh meat like Cruz and others, but then you had old school Democrats. And it's not that necessarily they agreed on a lot. I mean, they didn't. We were fighting all the time, but the way you see that committee operate now and the way they treat each other now and the way they treat their witnesses now is a very, very different time than what it was like when I was up there. So I think when I look back, I marvel at the people I was able to be around, but also just sort of shake my head at what it's become.
Yeah. The way they treated Justice Alito versus they treated Ketanji Jackson is totally different. I mean, they destroyed Alito in his confirmation.
Who was eminently qualified, and Ketanji was not, as we've seen from her work product thus far.
Yeah. I want to get a lot in because Katherine's brilliant, and I'm enjoying this so much. Let me ask you something. Bingo halls, state of Alabama, and particularly here in Jefferson County. Thoughts, comments, jokes? Go ahead.
Illegal unless they're playing paper bingo. You can play paper all you want.
There's bingos here, right? I can take you to some.
Yes, I know. Well,
and I'm not going to say names, but let's just say it like this. There may be people that are elected officials and their family members are running bingo halls in Jefferson County. You know anything about that?
I'm not at liberty to comment a whole lot on that, but
I didn't try to put you in the hot seat, guys.
I'll just tell you that it is offensive to the rule of law to open an illegal business and run it in broad daylight. I can also tell you that it is absolutely impossible for the Attorney General's office to police a county or the state for that, and you have to have a partnership and cooperation from local law enforcement if you want those things to stay closed. We have been up here numerous times, cease and desist, public nuisance cases, putting chains on the doors, and we can't stay here. Somebody else has to take that enforcement over.
Okay. Didn't want to put you in the hot spot. I just wanted to ask you about it since you're going to be the prosecutor.
I don't feel hot. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Fair game here. You have an undergraduate degree in political science.
Yep.
I have a graduate degree in history and political science. I'm sure you're familiar with the Federalist Papers. John Jay, Madison, Hamilton, right? Mm-hmm. Greatest founding fathers, brilliant people. How far are we from their vision now, and how close are we to their vision now?
Most days it feels pretty far, and I think that one thing that we run into daily that I reflect on the Federalist Papers, more often than any probably normal person should, is just that the whole design was for the states to be in charge, for the people to be in charge via the states. The states created the federal government, and now we live at its behest. And that, I think, is one of the primary roles of the Attorney General. And I think over the last 50 or 60 years, the states, especially the poorer states, have been trained to sell their sovereignty for money. And we've become disoriented from the fact that we're supposed to be in charge. And so I think that is one of the most important roles of the Attorney General. And I think it's something that not only do we want to push back against federal overreach, which, occurs all the time, but I would like to see us regain ground and return to the idea that the founders had, because I think the states running things is the idea of federalism and the 10th Amendment is the thing that best guarantees freedom, is a devolution of power out of Washington back to the states. That's the best way to protect people's freedom. And we have experienced that. We saw that during COVID. I mean, it could have been, just written out from history as this is what happens when you lose control from the state level. And so it's something that I'm very passionate about. I was passionate about it before I got in the AG's office, but I think about it all the time.
All right, folks, we're talking with Katherine Robertson of the Attorney General's office. We're talking about state sovereignty. She wrote a paper on it, and I kind of teased her into this question so she could talk about it a little bit. We'll be back in a minute after the break. Thanks. You're back.
You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Joe is a 20-year veteran of the Alabama courts specializing in criminal defense and family law. If you need a private legal consultation, email Joe at joeingramlaw.com. And now, welcome back to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram.
All right, we're back with Miss Katherine G. Robertson, Chief Counsel to Steve Marshall. She's running for the AG's office. Right before the break, we kind of teased in, we walked into it, to a big favorite subject of hers because she wrote a paper on state sovereignty. So, Katherine, talk a little bit about that on a level that the average person on the street can understand, and also talk about what do we do to get that back?
Yes, in 2016, before I joined the AG's office, I worked at a think tank called the Alabama Policy Institute. And if you remember, 2016 was the tail end of Obama's term. And one of the things he did as he was going out the door was he issued this memo via his Department of Education to all public schools across the country and said something about this bathroom issue, that you couldn't discriminate against genders when it came to bathrooms and locker rooms. And I don't even know if anybody had a clue what he was talking about at the time. That was a long time ago in the political lifespan. And so I had already been sort of thinking about this state sovereignty issue, and I wrote a paper and essentially said, Obama has done this on his way out the door. How would he accomplish this mission on bathrooms in public schools? He has no authority over public schools. And then I said, it's money. It's money that would be at stake because Alabama's public schools, like every other state, rely heavily on federal funding. And so if the federal government decides they want to add some new stipulation to the, contract on getting your money, then Obama was teasing that out as maybe the future. And so in 2016, I wrote, what if a future administration figures this out and goes all in on it? What will we do as a deep red state? And so didn't have to wait long. Biden comes in. And immediately out of the gate, the first thing he did was tie a stipulation to ARPA funding. Alabama needed ARPA funds. We wanted it. But he said, if you take them, you can't lower your taxes. Well, that's a direct affront to state sovereignty. And then you give it a few more years. And he did the vaccine mandates, or really just a few more months, did the vaccine mandates that could only be pushed down on people in Alabama through federal contracts. Whether it was our Department of Public Health workers or our public universities or our federal contractors, all of those people were subject to a federal vaccine mandate that couldn't have been accomplished had it not been for that stream of money. And so then, of course, the big one was the Title IX issue, girls' sports, separate bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. We were just weeks away from that being implemented in Alabama public schools, and we were just one lawsuit away from stopping it. And so the Attorney General is supposed to be the last line of defense, not the only line of defense. And it just scared me to death and has scared me to death that sometimes it's just one lawsuit that's keeping us from that just grabbing hold in our state. And so I think that throughout the rest of President Trump's tenure, and hopefully we have another Republican after him in the White House, but it's just a conversation we've got to have because the bad times will come back. There will be another Democrat down the road, and we don't want to be in this volatile of a situation in a state like ours.
Katherine, let me ask you. There's so many questions I had, and my time is short. So back to AI real quick. Are you familiar with the new law that came out in October of 24 about if a minor uses AI apps and changes pictures and disseminates it, that it makes it an adult crime versus being charged as a juvenile? Are you familiar with that just a little bit?
Yeah, I worked on a law sort of tangential to that one during the same time period with Senator Matt Woods that also dealt with AI-created child sex abuse material, formerly known as child porn, because when AI started getting big a couple of years ago, we found that it was difficult for us to make criminal cases against those that were manufacturing and producing CSAM, and we were going to have to prove that it was a real child versus an AI-generated image. And we actually, working with Senator Woods, got that law changed that we don't have to prove that anymore because all CSAM is bad, whether it's AI-generated or not. So Alabama on the criminal side has been I think, on the forefront and been vigilant, but tackling AI as a whole is something I think every state in the country is trying to grapple with right now.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about campaign funds, PAC money, things like that.
Yeah.
I believe roughly to date your campaign has raised approximately $2 million or maybe just over that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of your colleagues that's running for the office as well has raised approximately about the same amount of funds. Talk a little bit about this, about the PAC money and the campaign funds in a race such as this. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, all campaign funds either come from an individual, a business, a PAC, or a 501c4. I have been heavily criticized by my colleague. I would call him my opponent, who talks a lot about out-of-state dark money and that kind of thing. Nationally, conservatives often use 501c4s to support candidates. Conservative organizations nationally have been very, very passionate about protecting donor privacy because big-scale conservative donors get doxxed really bad. But at the same time, I've been very open about where my national money has come from. It has come primarily from the Republican Attorneys General Association. I'm the only candidate in the country that has been endorsed in a primary by the other 28 Republican Attorneys General, which is one of the things I'm most proud of in this campaign. A key donor to the Republican AGs Association is a man named Leonard Leo, who's been known as the godfather of the conservative legal movement. Leonard and I had a conversation before I got into this race, and I told him that for a staffer to make a successful run for Attorney General, I thought I needed to have $1 million right out of the gate because I was going to be running against somebody who'd run statewide twice and somebody else who'd run locally several times. And because of my conservative track record, my issue on my record on pro-life issues, on state sovereignty issues, on DEI issues and all that, Leonard agreed to support me and gave me that first $1 million that I needed, and it has taken off from there. And I'm super grateful for the people that believed in me early, and then, of course, that led to getting the support of the Alabama Farmers Federation and the Cattlemen and the Forestry Association and over 20 sheriffs around our state and the builders and contractors and so on and so forth. So although I have received a lot of support nationally, which I'm very proud of, I've also received just as much support from inside the state.
All right, so softball question from me. Are you gonna spend it all before the primary, or are you gonna hold back? Don't pull a Mitt Romney. Are you gonna spend all the money before the primary?
Yeah.
All right. You're not gonna leave anything in there. You're gonna spend it.
Because I'm confident I can raise more if I need it.
Well, you're not going to say this, but I can. If you win the primary, let's presume you win the primary. For all intents and purposes, you're going to be the Attorney General of Alabama.
Yeah, that should be the way it works in a state like ours, yes.
Okay, so there's no reason not to hold back.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to ask you that. Let me ask you about this. I know that you spoke recently down in Fairhope with a women's group, and you've already talked a bit about this, and it doesn't matter to me talking about breaking the glass ceiling, anything like that. I don't think it's really that, okay? I think for me as a lawyer, someone that's practiced law in this state for 24 years, you got to be a little bit proud if you win, when you win, that there's going to be an asterisk behind your name in the history books. First female AG of the state of Alabama. It's got to mean something to you, right?
Yeah. Well, ask me when and if that happens. I'll say this. I mean, one thing you need to know about me is that I didn't come into this with the assumption that I would win. And I don't spend a lot of time, daydreaming about what it'll be like to win. I mean, I just wake up every day and think, okay, what do I need to do today to take a step forward in this race? So I don't spend a lot of time reflecting on that, and that's just the honest truth. Were I to win and were I to be the first woman Attorney General, I'd absolutely be proud of that. I mean, every single morning when I walk to my desk, I walk past a long line of official photos of every AG we've ever had, and they all look the same. So yeah, it means something to me. I mean, I'm a girl, I'm a mom, I've had a long career that I don't think I've suffered for being a young female in the roles that I've played, but that's not to say it's always been super easy. So, yeah, I'd be proud of that. But it's just not something that I think a lot about. And when I'm out on the campaign trail, I say this and I mean it. I would not want anybody to vote for me because they wanted to help elect the first woman. Not all women candidates are created equal. I want them to vote for me because I'm the most conservative, I'm the most qualified, and I happen to be a woman.
Yeah. The only reason I want to talk about this for a second is that I had 2 law clerks for the summer, Cumberland, Alabama. You know, we talked during lunch, things like that. And I'm far removed from law school. And one of them was telling me that, Joe, there's far more female law students than there are males now. And I think that's true. And I think that's been probably the trend over the last maybe 10, 15 years. So I just think, and we have a lot more female judges than we've ever had.
You do? Yeah.
And so, you know, I just think that's great. Let me ask you this on a level.
Let me say one more thing on that.
Okay.
I should have mentioned this. You know, I spend a lot of time with the other AGs around the country. I've mentioned that a few times. And I would say in the group of 28 Republican AGs right now, we've got Lynn Fitch in Mississippi, who's a good friend of mine. We've got Liz Murrell in Louisiana, who's a good friend of mine. We've got Brenna Byrd up in Iowa, and we have a brand new female Attorney General, Katherine Hanaway, in Missouri. I'd be honored to join the ranks with them, and I think it's a great thing for the Republican AGs at large to add a few females to the group.
Yeah. Katherine, you interrupted me. I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry.
Oh, I know. From the 50,000-foot view, do you remember the race between Sue Bell Cobb and Drayton Neighbors for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court?
I do, because Drayton Neighbors is a mentor of mine and a close friend.
Okay. And at that time, you know, there was so much talk about how expensive that race was for that position. And last night I was just thinking while I was preparing and looking at some data for this, people don't realize how expensive a race is, but to think that between you and Jay and Pam Casey, that somewhere between probably $5, $6, $7 million is being spent for a position that pays roughly the same as the Alabama Chief Justice, which is roughly, I guess, $160, $175. I don't know the exact number now. That's insane, right? Or is it the other side that the people that are supporting you know that it's so important that they're spending the money that would get the right person in the position?
Listen, I mean, the Attorney General has an enormous amount of power, and so there are a lot of people who care about it. I mean, we play a regulatory role. We obviously play a huge criminal justice role. I mean, we've discussed the various things. You know, the AG can make people rich. I mean, you can hire law firms and make them wealthy. You can hire plaintiffs firms and sue companies all day long. I mean, it is a lot of power, and there is a lot of money at stake. I would say that's probably why these races get a lot of attention. I'm thankful that my donors just want me to be conservative, and they want to give me the resources I can to win this race without having to compromise my conservative values. And so I'm very grateful for that. I don't know why elections just get more and more expensive. I guess inflation. Yeah. But, you know, it certainly keeps good people out. It does. And it would have kept me out if not for what we've already discussed, if not for having a few key people that believed in me. I'm a small town girl. I'm not independently wealthy, and I've been a staffer. That's not a great way to, stir up a lot of financial support for a race. But thankfully I have it, and, I'm running hard.
Yeah. So you have been in your role as chief counsel to Steve Marshall for the last 10 years, right?
Yep.
All right. So, let's just presume you win. Not saying that Steve Marshall's done a bad job, because he hasn't done a bad job. What, if anything, would you like to see change, or what do you want to do to put your mark on the office, if you understand that question? Yeah,
I do. I mean, I think Steve and I have been great partners, in part because we have very different personalities. I got a little bit bigger personality than him. I want to take his legacy on the national stage and amplify it. I want to represent Alabama well outside of Alabama as one thing. I am very troubled by our redistricting case. I'm very troubled that we have school systems still under desegregation orders. I'm very troubled by the way we're treated by federal courts because of our history. And I want to do everything I can to change that by the way I carry myself, the way I conduct myself, and the types of cases that we bring and the way we defend our cases. That is something that I want to do bigger and better. He has laid a great foundation for me to do that, but it's something I care a lot about. I just think being visible, being a leader, that's something that I will be able to do a lot faster because of the job I've already had. I have the relationships in the law enforcement community. I have the relationship with the legislature, with the other Republican AGs, and with this administration. And so I think that any business needs to be improving every 10 years. If you're not looking back and fixing things and improving things in any business, then you're not doing what you need to do. So there's leadership changes that need to be made. There's hires that need to be made. And I'd love to see our office have more of a footprint in North Alabama, too. Obviously, I live in Birmingham. Lots of our federal partners are located here, and sometimes it's a disadvantage to be further south. So I want everybody in Alabama to feel a connection and to feel access to our office, and that's something I'd like to look at.
Yeah. We were talking during the break, and just to get your thoughts, because you're a lawyer in the state of Alabama, and you know how important it is about judges. Most people on the street do not understand that concept. What is your thought about elected judges versus appointed judges, even if it's just appointed judges like in Florida, for the Supreme Court and the appellate courts? What do you think about that?
I think the reality is that we're not going to change the system that we have. I think people like the opportunity to vote. We have seen that with this PSC debate. People want to directly elect as many of their officials as they can. The problem with local judicial races is that not a lot of people educate themselves on the candidates. Not a lot of good candidates want to run. It's very difficult to defeat an incumbent. That takes money. And so we're a little bit stuck. And there are some places in our state, not a lot of places, but there are some places in our state where the judiciary really is an issue. That was one of the things I had in mind last year when I wrote the Speedy Trial Act. It's a bill I took over to the legislature to get these violent crime case backlogs cleared. And essentially it lets the prosecutor's office, either ours or the local DA, request to the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court to appoint a specially sitting judge to hear violent crime cases to clear backlogs. And that was in part in reaction to what we see in certain places in Alabama.
Yeah. My understanding is that we have a funding issue for the judicial system coming for the fiscal calendar year. From the news I've seen in the last week, I guess you've seen that report. Mm-hmm. I think there's like 12 or 13 judges that we've got to fund, and they don't know where the money's going to come from. Is there a funding issue with the AG's office, or are y'all good there on that position?
Well, there is a funding issue. It's not a shortfall per se. We live off of a very conservative budget, but I'll tell you something most people don't know is that right now it costs about $35 million a year to run our office with the number of employees we have right now. It's about 170. The legislature funds us at about 40% of our annual operating cost, which means we have to go out and find the other 60%. And so if it were not for big cases like opioids or the BP oil spill or the tobacco settlements or what have you, if it weren't for cases like that, we would have a significant budget shortfall. And so we have just sort of learned to live with that because the state has had, tight times and maybe facing some others. But if I'm elected Attorney General, it is something that over time I would like to see corrected because the AG should be able to pursue cases that they think are most important to the state of Alabama and not cases that can help keep their lights on.
I want to ask you a question. I want to go back to a minute working with Jeff Sessions. How did you get into that role, please?
I was a clerk. I was a law clerk for the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I guess I did a good enough job to get rehired.
That is great.
They showed up. I mean, I had met Jeff Sessions along the way, but his staff came down and interviewed at the University of Alabama School of Law, and the first question they asked me is, how conservative are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And I said 11, and I think the interview went pretty well after that.
That's cute. Hey, let me ask you this. I saw an interview you did. You made a comment that if you don't do this, or if you couldn't do this, that you would like to be a professional water skier. Talk about that for a second.
Well, I mean, after doing this for a while, if they want to kick me out of the office and I got to go find something else to do, then might as well do something fun. So I've been a prolific water skier. Probably learned how to ski in maybe first or second grade. Nothing I love more than being on the lake and in a boat. And so I'm very good at it. I've taught all my cousins, my nieces and nephews. I've taught people how to ski my whole life. And so I figure there might not be a lot of money in it, but probably a whole lot of joy. So, so that's my plan B.
I love that. My plan B is if I can't practice law, I'm a long-distance runner. I would like to just run around the country and run a nonprofit organization. So,
there you go.
Yeah.
I'm a runner, but I'm a short-distance runner.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think is the biggest challenge for Alabama in the next 4 to 10 years?
I think every time I'm asked about that, I mean, I can answer that one of two ways. We've got some really serious challenges within our state government. Our prison system is one of those. We are fighting lawsuits all the time, and we've got, buildings that need either serious repairs or rebuilding, and it is a significant cost to the state. That's one thing that's going to carry over into the next AG's term, and something that I worry about a lot. I am also concerned about just the mental health opportunities and what the government's role is in that. A long time ago, we decided it wasn't politically correct to have a bunch of people involuntarily committed in our state, and we got rid of those facilities, and now that's really come back to bite us in a real way. That will be a problem that the next governor inherits. But I think bigger picture than that is sort of what I've already talked about, which is just we are constantly faced with issues that we find we have no control over because of Washington and because of old views of Alabama, consent decrees that have been there for decades, federal overreach where we ceded authority a long time ago, and those issues pop up far more frequently than people realize. And so, again, that's one reason I'm kind of obsessed with that topic, because so many of the problems that we have really do trickle down from that.
Yeah, they do. So I always ask everybody that's on the show that's been running for office, talk about running a statewide office. You're working full time. You're doing this full time. What's a day like for you? Do you wake up every day like Groundhog's Day? Talk about the number of miles. Talk a little bit about this experience. Yeah,
I mean, and listen, I've got 2 small children, so it's not like there's not another part of my life as well. I sit down most Friday afternoons and look at my calendar for the next week, and I've got to balance meetings in the office. Right now the legislature's in session, and then areas of the state where I've been invited, and you try to put it together like a jigsaw puzzle. Fortunately, I have very competent campaign staff that help me get all that sorted out. But I mean, there are times where I've had to cancel a speaking engagement because something popped off at the office, or vice versa. But I think that I've tried to just have the attitude that this is a pretty unique opportunity to get to see our state. My family's been in Alabama since 1818, a year before Alabama became a state, and I've always been a lover of Alabama's heritage, of our history, and so I try to view it as an opportunity to meet a whole lot of different kind of people. And I think most days that's enough, but there are days where I leave my kids sad that I'm leaving, or come home later than I thought that I'd be. And it's not easy. And so I think that if I can give everybody else running a compliment, like, it's not easy to do. And I've always said something has to be wrong with you to do it. You either are obsessed with having power and ambition, or you actually think you can fix something. So I'm the latter. I think there's something that I have to offer after my 10 years of service, but campaign life is not glamorous. I eat a lot of peanut butter crackers from gas stations, and I have darker circles under my eyes than I would care to admit, but that's the life. But it's not forever. It'll be over.
Well, folks, you just got to hear from Miss Katherine Robertson, who is running for the Republican ticket for the AG's office. Katherine, thank you so much for this hour. I really appreciate you coming in and doing this for me. Thank you.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right. We wish you Godspeed on the election trail, okay?
Take care of my buddy Matt Gentry when he comes on next.
All right. Thank you. We'll be back.
You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. He's a tough street-fighting lawyer with the highest ratings for honesty and integrity. He's here to answer your legal questions and get you the help you need. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Joe Ingram has more than 20 years' experience fighting for his clients here in the state of Alabama. Joe's focus is criminal defense and family law. You don't have to face your legal issue alone. You've got Joe Ingram on your side. In case of sensitive legal matters, you can always reach out directly to Joe at joeingramlaw.com and arrange for a private consultation. And now, Alabama's defender of the defenseless, protector of the people, and all-around good guy, Joe Ingram.
All right, we're back. It's Saturday, February 21st. We had the first hour with Katherine Robertson, who is running for the Attorney General's office in the state of Alabama. She is chief counsel to Steve Marshall. Great interview. Thank you, Miss Robertson, for that hour. Folks, we got lucky. Some news broke this week. I called Matt Gentry, who is the sheriff of Cullman County. He was on a couple weeks ago. He's running for the Alabama Public Service Commission. And I called Matt and I said, hey, would you like to stop by and talk about the news of the week? And he said, sure. All right, Matt, how are you?
Good, good. It's been a very exciting a week or so.
Hadn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Okay, Matt. So, my day job is I practice law.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sitting in a courtroom, scrolling through my iPhone and looking at the news stories coming off. And the big story over the last week was, I think we're going to introduce some legislation, and we're going to start appointing the PSC in 28. We're not going to elect them anymore. We're going to let the governor and the legislature appoint our Public Service Commission.
Yeah.
And then the next day was, maybe that's not just a good idea right now. We're going to pull that one back just a minute. That's the first story I want to hit you with.
All right.
Talk about that with me.
Well, let me start this. I was thinking about you, Joe, and being an attorney. 27 years in law enforcement. Before I was elected, I spent 11 years in drug enforcement, and I think you are a great defense attorney. You would have been the defense attorney that I would love to be in the courtroom with, because you would be like a dog just after the guy on the stand. But then when you get done, shake hands, hug, and go eat lunch. So I just wanted to say that you impressed me a lot. And so I've always admired those kind of defense attorneys. And but when it broke about the appointed Public Service Commission, I'm a constitutional sheriff. I believe you stand up for people. I mean, that's our job as a sheriff. You stand up for citizens. You take care of them, and at no time do you ever take the voice away from the people in an election. If you want to change the law, you put it on the ballot and let the people have the voice and vote. But when I saw that come out, it just didn't sit right with me that you would take a position that's been elected since 1915 and take the voice away from the people that allows them to vote.
Have you been hit with that a lot in the last week or so?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay.
I have.
And what's the consensus from all your speaking engagements, everybody you're interviewing with?
I've probably talked to a couple thousand people since it broke, at different meetings going around the state, different counties. and the consensus is the same. They're all mad that you would take their right away to vote. I mean, that's their voice. Whether you agree whoever gets elected or not, it's still their right to go vote and have a voice. And the thought of that being taken away from them it just made them mad.
Before I get to the why question, I want to back up just a second because I want to talk about our interview back in the past.
Sure.
I would say 99% of the people in the state of Alabama still do not know who sits on the Alabama Public Service Commission or what their job really is. So the fact that everybody's that mad about it, what do you think about that?
Well, I kind of use it as a joke in my speeches now. I said, a year ago when I announced I had to tell people what the Public Service Commission did, a month ago, nobody knew about the Public Service Commission, but today everybody in Alabama knows about the Public Service Commission. So it's a week-long education, and people are really starting to study it now and looking at how it impacts Alabama.
Do you have a line of thought of why this came out all of a sudden? Do you think what's your position on this?
Well, I think you see a lot of challengers that are running. Of course, it's just me and my opponent in the race, and I'm running against the incumbent. And then on the other side, place two, there's 5 running in that. And so you're potentially looking at having 1 or 2 changes in the Public Service Commission. And quite frankly, I think it just unnerves people.
Yeah.
Because this is what I've been told. People like me, they like talking to me, but I'm too independent. I don't need, and I don't want this to sound bad or anything like that, but I've had a great career. I've 27 years in law enforcement. When I retire every month, I'm blessed with a retirement check coming in. I've got retirees insurance. So I'm in a position to be very independent. And I think that makes people nervous.
Yeah. You say that now, Matt. When you get to Montgomery here, January 27, don't make me call you one day and say, I looked at your bank account.
Yeah.
I looked at your coffers.
Yeah.
You're going to be going to the Netherlands to look at windmills for power on Alabama Power Plane.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with that.
Oh, no. I had the question asked to me the other day. I was doing an interview, and they said, well, we think about the PSC, we think about corruption, whining and dining and all that. And I said, listen, if I want to go hunting, I go hunting. Me and my boys hunt. If I want to go play golf, we go play golf. If I want to go out to eat, I go out to eat. I don't need anybody to do that for me. And I also have a rule. I don't go anywhere unless I can walk home. So you don't have to worry about me going to the Netherlands. I'm pretty much a U.S. guy. If I can walk home from California and I can walk home from Washington, D.C. So, but I don't travel where I can't walk home.
Okay.
And I don't get on big ships either.
Okay. So the next story that drops this week is there was an audio leak. You want to talk about that, or do you want to stay immune to that because of in the race?
Sure. No, I mean, it's out there. So, I mean, if you're going to be transparent, you got to talk about what's out there. But, I think it's anything in life. And I learned this a long time ago. Again, 27 years in law enforcement. I was actually the first deputy at the Cullman County Sheriff's Office that had a camera, audio, video camera. We had the VHS tapes. I would have to go to Walmart and buy VHS tapes and change them out when they got full, and I kept them. And I learned the first time I got sued, but I had it on audio and video recording, and it didn't go nowhere because you told the truth and you did what's right.
You were covered.
I was covered, yeah. I mean, and nobody knew about cameras and audio then. So then I built a career, like I said, 11 years in narcotics, the last 4 at DEA out of Birmingham. And so I understand that life. And as a sheriff, it's no different. Anything and everything I do, anywhere and everywhere I go, there's going to be pictures taken. There's going to be people recording you. There's no secrets in this world, especially in 2026. So when you have phone calls and you say things and you do things, you got to expect somebody to record you. And when they record you, they're going to let it go if it benefits them.
Yeah.
You know, if it doesn't pass the smell test, then guess what? People's going to use it to their advantage. And I think that's what you saw. It was, you know, two groups talking, and typically they're on opposite sides of an agenda, and it was trying to negotiate a truce for an agreement on a bill, and it just didn't pass the smell test, and they utilized it.
Let me ask you this. So the next story that drops this week, I think it was the next day, the executive director of the PSC, been there for 15 years. I think I'm going to retire today.
Sure.
Do you think any of these go together? Do you think they all stand on their own merit, or do you think there's some connections here? What do you think?
Well, I mean, you know, I haven't, you know, dived too deep into it, but, you know, I mean, a lot of times there's nothing happens by accident. You know, it's usually when you see things like that, it's for a reason. I mean, I announced in August of 24 that I was going to retire from sheriff, so I gave people notice and plenty of notice that I was going to retire. So, you know, there's a lot of negativity going on right now with, you know, of course, Alabama Power and everything that's going on with the legislature. And sometimes people just see the writing on the wall and just say, I'm done. You know, I don't want to be part of it.
Did you know the executive director of the PSC?
I do. I've never even been down to the PSC building, so I've never met any of them.
You know the person?
No, sir. No, sir. I didn't know.
Let me ask you this. Since you've been running for the PSC, since you've been on my podcast, you've been all over the state, anybody from Alabama Power reach out to you to get your philosophy in the event that you win your position?
Sure. Right when I started running and then announced, you know, they reached out and talked to me, and we had a conversation like you and I are talking, and you know, and I just told them, I said, look, you know, Alabama Power is a big company. Y'all provide a lot of jobs, a lot of stability. The way I am is right's right, wrong's wrong. I can agree with you or disagree with you, and either way, it doesn't make me mad or upset. But I'm the type of person that if I agree with you, I will tell you I agree with you, and if I don't, then I'll say no, I'm not doing that. I don't agree with that, and they understood that. But that's been kind of the gist of the conversation. I mean, you know, they're not going to call me, and
they're not courting you.
No, they don't court me, and that's the blessing. You know, you can get online and look at campaign finance reports. You know, everybody talks about money. It's right. Easy. It's easy to search money. It's easy to see. 97% of my money has come from small businesses and individuals, and I'm blessed. I mean, we've raised about $450,000, and you know, I got Alpha's endorsement, so I got the Farmers Federation that supports me. I got Manufacturer Alabama, I got Forestry, and I've got Petroleum and Convenience Market, and really petroleum and it was Petroleum and Convenience Market came on first, and then of course September I got Alpha, and they've been very supportive of the campaign, and you know, I think they like the independence that I have, and you know, I mean, again, I'm blessed, and if I agree with you or don't agree with you, we'll talk about it, and I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you the same question I asked Katherine in the last hour. So, you gonna spend all your money for the primary, or are you gonna hold it back for the general? There's nothing to hold back, and you know why. Sure.
No, I'm all in. When I do something, I'm all in, and you know, our goal is to win the primary.
But I mean, my question is, before the primary, whatever you've got in your campaign coffers, you gonna spend it all?
I'm planning on it.
You're not going to pull a Mitt Romney and hold money back. I mean,
no.
Okay, you're going to spend it.
I'll spend it.
Don't hold on it.
No. We will. And besides raising $450, I put $100 of my own money in it to get started.
Yeah.
And that's the same way I did when I was run for sheriff. Now that's a completely different scale. I spent about $90 in 2014 to run for sheriff, and you know, you have people that says, "Oh my gosh," but it's expensive. You know, when you're traveling all over the state and you're campaigning and paying for media and everything that goes on with it, it's not cheap, and it takes a lot of money to run a statewide office.
Yeah, we're talking with Matt Gentry. He is the elected sheriff of Cullman County, Alabama. Has been for more than
I'm on my 12th year. I'm going on my 12th year.
12th year. I don't know why you're leaving, but whatever. He's running for the Public Service Commission. He came in today. He agreed to do a segment with us about the news that broke this week. We've talked about the Public Service Commission. Mm-hmm. We've talked about it in several episodes the last couple of weeks, and this last week I thought was really important. So, Matt, if I probably won't get to see you again unless something really breaks on this before the primaries, and I got a feeling that they're going to back off of this. Mm-hmm. They don't want any more out there before everybody has to go home and vote.
Sure,
gets out of Montgomery. I don't think I'll get to see you again. So, just bring me up to speed on your election, your campaign, the state, your travels. Talk about that for a second.
This week, number one, I've been very blessed. I've got my wife and my kids and everybody. They're very supportive. Everybody that's helping me, and so we're traveling throughout the state. I mean, I probably average 3,000 to 4,000 miles a week. So, like this week I started in Monday in Escambia County. So, and I'm pulling dual roles, or I'll go into the office, get my sheriff's office business handled, and then, which I got a great staff, and then I went to Escambia County, and from the Escambia County this week I had to go to Linden. From Linden I drove to Chilton County and had a group there, and then come in and Athens here, got to go to Birmingham again tomorrow, so it's it's never stopping. Of course, then you got phone calls and you're doing everything, and of course, trying to raise money. That's one of the biggest things, calling, and I've got a lot of groups that are helping me and supporting me, that's putting on fundraisers and those kind of things. So, but mainly, I'm a grassroots campaign. I like seeing and meeting people, and I want to take my philosophy from the sheriff's office to the Public Service Commission and be a voice for the people. I mean, the people are who you represent. That's your job, is to be their voice. When you're an elected official, it doesn't matter the sheriff or the public service commissioner. You make decisions on the people's voice. And if you ever lose that ability to make decisions on their voice, then you fail.
Yeah. We were talking in the break before you came in after Katherine. Last time you were here, we talked a little bit about data centers. I wasn't as up to speed as I should have been. I've gone back. I've done a little research lately. I'm trying to get up to speed because it's coming. It's the technology. There was a story that broke this week down in Shelby County, Columbiana. They said we're going to have really tough restrictions if there's going to be a data center put in here. Do the people around the state of Alabama, do they understand what data centers are? What's the people think about what a data center is in the state of Alabama?
Most of them have a broad idea of what it is and what it does, but the vast majority, especially out in the rural areas, are against it because they don't want to lose their farmland. It's the same way with these solar farms and those kind of things. They don't want to lose farmland that produces, cattle, crops, everything that we need to survive, to put up, a 1 million square foot data center there that uses up extra power and water and all the things that it deals with. So the vast majority are really not for it. When I travel the state, they understand it, but they're not for it in their area.
Yeah. And I did some research this week. They are putting huge data centers up in Texas and California. I mean, take it up, huge square footage, hundreds of acres of land. Yeah. What's the answer here to this? Because apparently we're going to have the data centers for the technology and the information. Where's the happy medium here?
Really thinking on it, you really have to do a lot of research to find the happy medium, because, I was down in Mobile last week, and even in Escambia County, and that was a hot topic because, they got Stockton in the solar farm there, so they're upset about it. And, they're just so aggravated with the way things are getting pushed down their throat and they don't have a say-so in it. I don't know. Yeah, I think we'll have to research really geographically locations that don't hurt farmland and people, that can sustain the appropriate energy and the water, but also it doesn't impact the ratepayer. If you put a data center, I don't think the average ratepayer should be paying for it. I mean, that's the data center's job to pay for it. Mm-hmm. Your power bill shouldn't go up because they're making millions of dollars off of it on something that doesn't generate a lot of jobs. And that's one of the things I hear throughout the state. Even the Cattlemen's Association, when I interviewed with them, one of the things they brought up was that you can build a data center, but it doesn't create economic stability because there's no jobs attached to it, really.
Right.
When you got, I'm not smart enough to, but you got guys that can remote in, and they're smart enough to run it remotely. They don't even have to be on site. And so that's the biggest thing I hear, is that it just does not create a lot of stability, economic stability with jobs. And it uses a lot of power and a lot of water. So I think just being strategic about where you put them, work with communities, put them in a place that's strategic. It doesn't have that impact that they're afraid of.
Right. But I do think there is a benefit to them, because if you build one here, I would think the cost to build one of these data centers is a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So it is going to create some jobs to build it.
Correct.
There is going to be some revenue that comes in for the land,
sure.
Maybe some
mm-hmm.
tax revenue, things
mm-hmm.
like that. But in the long term, we were talking about this during the break, in 30 years, is it going to turn into like big shopping malls where they're sitting empty? And what are we doing with
mm-hmm.
that now?
Sure.
Are we going to need a data center the size that we're making them today
mm-hmm.
in 50 years from now? I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's a big question.
It is. I mean, the best way I can relate it is like my dispatch center. We have a big dispatch center, but it was bigger when I started in 1999. As far as the equipment was bigger. Now the equipment's smaller because, again, technology and things. So I can see, what you're talking about, that you're going to have these data centers, and then all of a sudden technology grows and the equipment gets smaller, and you don't need those big buildings.
Right. Footprint.
The footprint. That's right.
Yeah.
Because as technology grows, things get better and smarter and smaller. And so it's, I see the point exactly. I mean, you don't want a bunch of eyesores in a community.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot to think about.
It is.
For every state. My concern is I just don't want to fall behind Russia or China in technology if we need this.
Sure.
And this is a subject that we all got to get educated on.
That's right. So. Well, and most people don't know this, but we're behind. The U.S., the military is behind on drone technology than the other. I mean, we're way behind than other countries. China and Russia and Ukraine, they're all ahead of us, and that's not a great place to be because of drone warfare. I mean, we're, the days of running out in the battlefield, I mean, they're still there, but it's completely, that animal has changed.
Yeah.
And we're trying to play catch up on just drone warfare.
Did you see that article this week? There was a video I saw this week of, they had some drones that were running a race, and they were using AI robots. Did you see that?
I didn't see that one.
And this robot can run like 30 to 34 miles an hour. And they were comparing it to like the Olympic
mm-hmm.
athletes. And I was thinking, well, I don't want to watch drones run a race. I want to watch humans run a race.
Mm-hmm.
But theoretically, I think it was either China. I think it's probably China, not Russia, that has already built a drone robot like Star Wars characters that can run 30 to 34 miles an hour.
See, and that scares me.
Yeah.
I mean, it scares me. I mean, where does it stop?
Yeah.
I mean, really, where does it stop? And I know technology and everything that we have, but I don't know where my grandkids will be with technology. I mean, it's pretty scary. When the cartels are using drones to drop bombs on other the cartel members.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty scary.
All right, folks, you got to listen to Matt Gentry. He's running for the Alabama Public Service Commission. He dropped by to talk about the news this week. He'll be back out on the road. Check out Matt. And, Matt, we appreciate you stopping by.
Joe, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We'll be back after the break.
You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram. If you need confidential legal help off air, reach out to Joe at joeingramlaw.com. Stay tuned for more. Joe will be right back after this break for news and weather. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Joe is a 20-year veteran of the Alabama courts specializing in criminal defense and family law. If you need a private legal consultation, email Joe at joeingramlaw.com. And now, welcome back to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram.
All right. You're listening to The Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. Your Alabama lawyer on WERC 105.5 in Birmingham. 102.5 WBHP in Huntsville, 105.9 in Tuscaloosa. If you need an investigator, Spy for Rent. Spy for Rent is your investigator. Jeff Hammett, Corey Fuller are the names to know. We had Katherine Robertson in the first hour running for the Attorney General's office. Thank you, Miss Katherine, for the interview. Folks, you got to hear it. Good interview. Then you just got to hear from Matt Gentry. He's running for the Alabama Public Service Commission. Talked about the news that's broke this week. All right, so we're going to talk really fast about some national news. I think this would be international news, John. Former Prince Andrew got picked up the other night, brought in for questioning. I had to go look this up. Guess what? My question was, has there ever been a member of the royal family ever charged with a crime? Guess what? You have to go back 400 years. Charles I, 1646. There is a lot of talk over in England. If you listen to the BBC, there is a trump card for Prince Andrew. Because the monarchy is over the court system in England. If Andrew were to say, well, I'm going to subpoena King Charles to testify, guess what happens to the investigation? They're going to drop the case. But here is the problem in that, and I really hate this for King Charles. They're already talking about King Charles having to abdicate his throne based upon all this, and if Andrew were to pull that card, and most people in England would rather have William now. They like him better than Charles. Last time we had a king that had to abdicate was in 1936, right? That's how Queen Elizabeth became queen, because of what happened with her uncle. Remember that? Isn't it funny how history repeats itself? Hate that news. And by the way, this whole thing with Epstein, however you say his name, this is a joke. This is not about the sex stuff. This is about him talking about secrets of Europe. Well, he's already been in trouble for doing that back in the 90s once, and his ex-wife, Princess Fergie did the same thing. So here's what's going to happen. They are going to get Andrew, and they are going to ship him off to the Middle East, maybe to Dubai, maybe to Oman, and they're going to tell him to go live out his days there and get out of the royal family, because it's just not good for the family firm. That's what's going to happen with that. Folks, have you been following the lawsuit with Maida, with the plaintiff lawyers about
the kids that have killed themselves spending too much time looking at the internet. Zuckerberg testified this week, and my thoughts on this are still the same. I do not believe that you should be able to sue for this type of activity, and here's why. At some point, you have to take responsibility for your own actions. We have 2 generations of kids that have grown up with computers. They didn't grow up in my generation where we stayed outside until dark. We played soccer or kickball. We drank water out of a hose pipe. You just stayed outside and you played with your neighbors. How often do you go down the street and you see kids outside anymore? You don't. Sad. So there's that. Hey, the Elon Musk Twitter trial started this week in California, if you're watching that. Isn't it great that you have so much money that there's a lawsuit about your company and you don't even care? So this is a shareholder lawsuit. People are mad because Elon was buying up the stock. He was out Twitter one day, I may buy the company. Twitter one day, I'm not going to buy the company. Stock prices going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Everybody's mad about it. So they file a federal lawsuit in all places of California. And the big rub was, how do you find anybody on the globe who doesn't have an opinion about Elon Musk, either good or bad? That'd be like President Trump, right? And so they whittled down the jury over 5 hours, and the federal judge finally said, it would be hard in this day and time to find somebody that doesn't know anything about Elon Musk. Some of the people that were dismissed, I found very enlightening. They were not in favor of the plaintiff lawyers about the stock transition there. There are some very good jurors on there. There are some IT people. There are some engineer people. So hopefully this trial comes out well. Don't really have a dog in the fight in this. You had to believe as much money as Musk had. If he was really buying up the stock, maybe he did have an intention to want to buy the company. Now, should he have manipulated the price to buy more lower? I don't know about that. May be something to that. He might want to talk to somebody like Richard Scrushy if you're going to do that kind of stuff. I don't know. That's something to think about. That's some news this week. Some other news I want to talk about that I found interesting that you don't see a lot of these stories unless you go out and read legal news. There's a story this week. Do you know the tattoo artist Kat Von D? None of you know, do you? John's shaking his head. He doesn't know. John, you know who Kat Von D is? She had a TV show about putting tattoos on people. Tattoo artists. Okay, she's got more money than us. Let's just put it like that. She got sued in federal court. And you're going to go, why would she have gotten sued in federal court? Well, she did a tattoo of a Miles Davis photograph. And so for all intents purposes, the person that did the autograph felt like it was a copyright issue, infringement issue of his artistic work product. Well, she won the case originally, and it went all the way to the Ninth Circuit. And I think she's going to win this case. If you take somebody's likeness and you create a tattoo exactly correct, does that mean you've copyright infringement? I don't think so. That's your own hand, freehand, doing a tattoo. So I found that case kind of interesting. If you know anything about tattoos out there, you would know who Kat Von D is. The other case I would like to talk about is related to data centers, and we talked about this with Matt Gentry. There is a lawsuit out in New Mexico.
pending right now by the Attorney General for the state. $1 trillion data center lawsuit is out there pending. And folks, there's a lot of litigation that is going to come from data centers over the next probably 25 years. Big law is dependent upon data centers. And you're going to say, Joe, why? Well, you have to have big law to buy land. You have to have big law to create contracts. You have to have big law to go create contracts with, say, an energy company that's going to provide the energy for the data centers. The connection between big law and people creating data centers is huge. And by the way, just something to think about. Do you know who the third largest landholder is in the United States today? Nobody's probably thought about this. Bill Gates. Why? Two things. If things really go south and we go back to the Depression, everybody's going to go back to farming. Everybody's going to be answering to Bill. And if it comes down to data centers, folks, we're not making any more land. If you got it all, you set the price. Bill Gates wins again. So there you go. Something to think about. Next story that I found really, really interesting this week, if I can get to it. I want to talk just a minute about Robert Duvall. We lost Robert Redford, we lost Gene Hackman, and we lost Robert Duvall this week. He was 95 years of age. Wonderful actor, wonderful man. I loved his work, and I was going back and I was looking at all the movies he had been in. The Godfather, 72, Lonesome Dove. Man, I love me some country western movies. Open Range, 2003. Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise, 1990. He did Four Christmases with Vince Vaughn in 2008. He did The Godfather Part 2. He was also in the original To Kill a Mockingbird in 1962. And by the way, one of my favorite movies is The Great Santini. And he was in the original MASH movie before MASH became a sitcom in 1970. Duvall is a wonderful actor. He could do any part. And by the way, my favorite movie of all of Robert Duvall's and my favorite legal movie is A Civil Action. A Civil Action is a true story about a mass tort environmental claim, and Robert Duvall represents one of the insurance companies, and John Travolta is a plaintiff's lawyer, and John had been doing car wrecks and things like that, and somebody baited him into taking this case, and he went all in. He spent all the firm's money. He spent all the firm's resources. They cashed in their 401ks because environmental litigation is really, really expensive. And so they get to the trial, they get to the end, and the jury has to ask some questions, and John Travolta and Robert Duvall are sitting outside on a bench in a courtroom. And Robert Duvall pulls out a $20 bill. And John says, "That's not going to get it today." And Robert Duvall, in his lovely voice, chuckled, and he said, No. Imagine me putting 6 zeros behind that. That's serious money, folks. And Travolta turned it down. He should have taken it because they didn't get any money in that. They got very little. In fact, it bankrupted his firm. It bankrupted him personally. But you know what the greatest line is in that movie? Robert Duvall said, folks, well, he didn't say folks. He said, he was talking to John Travolta's character, and he said, "We are the kings of the castle. We make the laws. We determine what people get. We determine what people do not get. We are the kings of the castle here." That's what lawyers do in a courtroom. Love that line. Love that line till this day. We talked a little bit about the Public Service Commission in the first segment of the half hour. There's been a lot of news this week. They tried to introduce some bills to do away with electing the Public Service Commission. I'm not sure if they're going to continue to go forward with this activity. Maybe they're going to back off before election season. And then a story broke this week of a audio recording allegedly between R.B. Walker and allegedly John Dodd of Energy Alabama. Energy Alabama is a nonprofit organization, Alabama, and they are against that. And so this audio leaks, and it's not good for those that are pushing to eliminate electing our public service commissioners. I am totally against that. I am for people voting for the PSC, but not for the same reason that you think I am. I personally believe that we should just deregulate power rates, gas rates, and let the market decide what the rate should be. I don't think we need an entity to try to protect us for the rates. I just think the markets should set the rates, and then you always come out better. Look at Walmart. Look at Target. There's nobody regulating Walmart or Costco for that matter. See? Anyway, a lot to follow up on the Public Service Commission. We are going to stay on that hot and heavy. And then, by the way, the very next day, the executive director of the Alabama Public Service Commission announces, I'm going to retire after 15 years. I'm not a conspiratorial theorist. Maybe these stories stand on their own. I don't know. Maybe they're all connected. But he decided to get out of the way. Maybe Alabama Power bought him a retirement home. Maybe they sent him to the Netherlands permanently to look at windmills. Just thoughts to think about. Or maybe he knew too much and he just decided to get out of the whole game because he didn't want to be a party to any of it. A lot to think about there. Anyway, you're listening to the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram on WERC. If you need my office, you can call us, 205-825-5297, 205-825-5297, if you'd like to schedule a consultation. We represent people in divorce cases. We represent people related to modifications of divorce. We represent those that are going to get married and would like to prepare a prenup. We also represent people for a postnuptial agreement. We did a postnup this week for a couple that just got married. Joe, why would you do a postnuptial agreement? Well, folks, generally that comes into play for second or third marriages where you have created assets for your family and you want to leave them to your biological children, and you don't want to leave them to the second or the third spouse. And that happened to be the case in this situation, so you do what is called a postnup. And the biggest thing out of this is that you do not commingle funds of what you have with your new spouse that would violate your postnuptial agreement. And the big question I got asked this week was, well, do both of us need an independent lawyer for a postnup? I have more assets than the other person. Yes, you both need an independent lawyer, and here's why. We have to disclose all your assets and your liabilities to your new spouse and what they're giving up and the terms of what they're giving up in case the marriage ends in divorce. They have to disclose to you all of their assets and liabilities and what they are going to agree to contractually if the marriage ends in divorce to you as well. It's a two-sided agreement. So that's why you both have to have separate counsel for a postnup.
My office represents people for criminal cases. We represent people that have licensing board issues. Those could be medical board, dental board, pharmacy board, nurses, nurse practitioners, nurse anesthetists. I got a new licensing case this last week. The person was really concerned. They did something in the line and scope of their duty. Someone was trying to sue the organization, and the organization said you need to get criminal representation, and you also need to get representation for your license as well. Person called me scared to death. We met with them. We got them in a better position, better frame of mind going forward for the case. So if you have a criminal case, we represent people in municipal courts. We represent people in state courts. And we also represent people in federal court as well. As always, I'd like to mention before we wrap up today's edition of the Legal Lowdown, if you need an investigator in the state of Alabama, Spy for Rent. Spy for Rent is the name to know if you need an investigator. Jeff Hammock, Corey Fuller are the best. They can serve papers. They can do investigations. They can do surveillance work. They can even forensically search cell phones. They can do bug sweeps on homes and cars to see if you have someone watching you. They are the very best at what they do, and they are the exclusive partner of my firm, and you will be very glad to have them on your side if you need them when that time comes. Spy for Rent, name to know. One other person I want to tell you about, because I do a lot of divorce work, is realtors. There is a great realty company in the state of Alabama in Birmingham called Flat Fee Realtors. Flat Fee Realtors. Amy Pewitt. She is the best. And here's why. I understand realtors work. They work on commission. A lot of realtors charge 3%, 4%, 5%, 6%. Amy doesn't do that. Amy's flat fee, and it's based on the range and the value of your house. And I've gotten to know Amy personally, and I highly recommend her if you are about to sell a home and you don't want to lose all the equity in your house. Amy, Flat Fee Realtors is the name to know for real estate. And not only that, she's a great marketer in that if she sells your home, well, then you may end up buying a home. So she's going to probably turn around and represent you in buying the home. So she's going to get 2 transactions out of meeting you and you becoming her client. So she's got a great marketing position in how she does this. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. If you need a realtor in the Birmingham area, or in Alabama for that matter, Amy Pewitt, Flat Fee Realty is the name to know. So we're getting close to next week for the State of the Union address. Folks, you need to watch that. There's been some thoughts about the Democrats walking out on the speech in total. There's been some commentary about having a side channel going with their own position. Usually after the State of the Union address, the opposing party has the right to speak on behalf of their party to give a opposition to the president's speech. Well, now they're just going to go head to head. I don't think anybody's going to watch that. You're either going to watch the president or you're not going to watch it all, because he's going to be on every channel and every platform that there is. I mean, he's just going to get all the time. So why compete with him? Just let him do it. You know, something I was thinking about yesterday, John Fetterman, the senator for Pennsylvania, who had a stroke before he was elected to office, and everybody thought he was not competent to be the senator, has turned out to be the most, how do you say this, maybe the most logical person for the Democratic Party, which is really scary. Oh, my God. John Fetterman? Really? What a world we live in. What a world we live in today. So we're about to wrap it up for the week, folks. Just want to share a couple things right before we close. Today is the 34th anniversary of my dad's murder. It's been 34 years ago today that my dad was murdered. There's been a lot of talk over the last year of the commercials that were written for a purpose. All I want to say is, Dad, I miss you, love you, and hope to talk to you soon. And that is all I'm going to say about it. And just going to leave it at that. I had a final thought for today. And can't seem to find it. And yes, we have some dead air time, and I'm embarrassed here for a second. Can't find it, folks. Guess it doesn't matter. Y'all have a great week. Next week, Jared Wellborn running for Shelby County Judge. Listen in. Love you. Got to go. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Legal Lowdown with your lawyer, Joe Ingram of Joe Ingram Law. Don't forget to follow Joe's Legal Lowdown podcast on iHeart. If you need a private legal consultation, reach out to Joe on his website, joeingramlaw.com. Tune in again next Saturday for the Legal Lowdown with Joe Ingram. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by any other lawyer.